Hey guys, this is Jason, and we are doing some more MC reviews. We've already covered Iron Man 1, 2, The Incredible Hulk, and Thor, and now we are talking about Captain America, the First Avenger, directed by Joe Johnston, and stars Chris Evans as Steve Rogers. As a skinny guy from Brooklyn that's trying to be a soldier because this movie takes place during World War II, then a scientist from the army finds him and decides to give him the super soldier serum, where it makes him big and tall and he's able to run really fast and he has super strength. And it's also a slow start of him becoming Captain America and proving that he's right to become a soldier, while the main villain of the film and the leader of Hydra, Johann Schmidt, aka the Red Skull, played by Hugo Weaving, is plotting to vaporize a lot of people and take over the world. I was aware of Captain America as a kid, mostly just from some of the stuff that I've seen him in, like the Marvel vs. Capcom games, which I didn't play myself, but I watched my dad play a little bit of the first game when I was little, which unfortunately Captain America was one of the only characters in that game I remember from it. And of course learned more about the character in the anime Ultimate Avengers film, which is kind of a Captain America film because most of the film centers around him. And of course a lot that I know about him is that he is a super soldier from World War II and he carries a shield that's vibranium. And I do remember getting excited for this film, mostly because I was learning more about the Avengers movie coming out and who they were going to have in that film, making me think, okay, I need to watch this film. I need to watch Captain America before the Avengers film comes out. And I remember having a lot of fun with this movie. I remember loving it and saying that it is a great Captain America film. And now that I rewatched it as an adult, I can say that it is still a fun movie. It's not an amazing film. It does have some issues, and it's definitely not my favorite Captain America film, but we'll get into those later. So just like with Thor, this movie takes a character that's very corny in the comics and makes him a very serious and down-to-earth character and make it work. Because when you look at the older Captain America comics from either the 40s or 50s or even 60s, they are very corny. Like for instance, the main costume he wears where he has wings on the cowl and pirate boots, and his suit basically looks like the American flag, but they still have a good balance with the corny side of Captain America while also taking the story seriously. And I like that they didn't go overboard with the whole pro-America stuff like you would see in the movie Team America, where you would have characters that would say America, yeah. And I like that this film didn't do too much of that, because if it did, then this movie wouldn't have worked. Sure, it does have some of those corny moments, like the Star Spangled Man with the Plan song, which is still a pretty catchy song, which is also kind of a fun way to sneak in that comic accurate Captain America costume in that scene. It does have some corny moments, like with some of the dialogue and how the cinematography is shot, but with the execution and the direction, it actually kind of makes the film fun. And what does kind of help make this film feel fun is the direction from Joe Johnston, who was pretty much the king of nostalgic 80s and 90s kids films, where he's known for directing films like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, The Rocketeer, Jumanji, and October Sky. And the direction here does help with the corny side and still have it feel like it's just there as icing on the cake, while still making it feel like that this film takes place in the 1940s, like with the setting, the costumes, the production design, the way people would talk in the 1940s. And Joe Johnston captured that tone really well, where he made this film feel like it takes place in the 1940s. Let's talk about Steve Rogers. He is the main character who's been wanting to be a soldier, and he wants to help people that are in serious need of help so that he can go out and kill the bad guys that are hurting them. The only problem with that is that he's too skinny, so he keeps going to places where he needs to enroll as a soldier, but they won't accept him. You just don't know when to give up, do you? I can do this all day. And when he gets the super soldier in him, that gives him an opportunity to prove to the army that he is capable of being a soldier, and he's not afraid to get himself hurt doing so. A good example of that is when Tommy Lee Jones throws a dummy grenade at the soldiers. They all evacuate except Steve, making it look like he was gonna sacrifice himself to save him until he realizes that it was just a test. But it also shows that he's not afraid to sacrifice himself to save people, making him look like a hero. hero, and that's what makes Captain America one of my favorite characters in the MCU. And now let's talk about his actor, Chris Evans. Now, when I found out that he was cast as Captain America for this film, it didn't make sense to me, because before I saw him as Captain America, I was more familiar with him as Johnny Storm from the Tim Story Fantastic Four films, where he was the frat boy of the team and he would ask a lot of girls out and he would pop jokes every once in a while. It didn't make sense to me that they would choose him to be Captain America back then. But when I watched the film myself, he blew me away and proved me wrong. Where he was one of those casting choices that didn't make sense to me at first, but when you see him as the character, he nails the character. Similar to how people reacted when they found out that Robert Downey Jr. was cast as Iron Man. They didn't like the idea at first for certain reasons, but people saw the first Iron Man film and thought that he was awesome as Iron Man. Another good example is Heath Ledger as the Joker. People thought that casting choice didn't make any sense, but they saw him as the Joker in The Dark Knight and thought he was the best live-action Joker. Evans does a great job as the character, where you see the character feel more charismatic and interesting, to the point where you completely buy him as Captain America. And of course you got other characters, like his best friend Bucky Barnes, played by Sebastian Stan, who later becomes a much more important character in the future films. Howard Stark, the rich billionaire who gives Cap the super soldier serum and is also Tony Stark's father, and Peggy Carter, Captain Phillips' agent and Captain America's love interest, played by Haley Atwell, and both of them do have really good chemistry, where she's one of the only people besides Bucky that would really understand what Steve is saying. And for a long time, Steve had to deal with people talking down on him because they didn't think he was capable of doing stuff like this, but she was one of the only people in his life that understood him, and you start to care about their relationship and you understand why she later becomes important to him. Then you have Red Skull, played by Weaving, a power-hungry leader of Hydra who uses his new weapon called the Tesseract to vaporize people. Now, he's not a very compelling villain. You don't really get to understand a whole lot about his motives or reasons, but what does make him a fun villain is Hugo Weaving's performance, making the character interesting and sometimes threatening, and the makeup on him is really good. It's very comic accurate and it makes him look intimidating. Alan Silvestri's score is also a highlight. It gives the energy and fun to the story and gives you the feeling that you're in the 1940s. And it's definitely one of Silvestri's best scores. And when you think of Silvestri, you already know that his score for this film is gonna be a highlight. Now, the action in this film is fun. It's enjoyable to watch. There really isn't like any action sequence that stood out to me, because most of it is just a bunch of slow motion and some hand-to-hand combat, but it doesn't really do much of that grit or some of the intensity that some of the other Captain America films had, where there isn't a action sequence that stood out to me. Nothing like the elevator scene from Winter Soldier, or like that one chase in Civil War between Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Black Panther. A lot of the action is just some of the fun stuff that people just want to see on the big screen, which is fine, and it does make the film enjoyable, but it doesn't have any action sequences that really stood out to me, which leads me to some of my negatives. Like with the visuals, most of them are still pretty good, but when you look at some of the visuals that they would do with Chris Evans by taking his head on a skinny body, you can really tell that they used some special effects to make him look that way, and it looks pretty obvious, and gratefully it's not in the film that much, but when you do see that, it just looks weird. Another issue is that this movie does lack character development, where you really don't learn a lot about the characters besides Steve Rogers. Sure, there's that one thing where you don't learn about why he wants to be a soldier, but you get to see him try to achieve that goal. But when you look at some of the other characters that are supposed to be important in future films, like Howard Stark, the movie doesn't really do much to flesh out like why he liked Captain America back in World War II, because that plays a very integral part in the future MCU films. Avengers, and seeing how it all starts in this film just feels lackluster. Then there's the way it ends, which, spoilers by the way, I'm gonna get into spoilers for how it ends and how it sets up the Avengers. So Steve takes Red Skull's ship and have it crash down into the Arctic so that it won't be in New York, but that crash unfortunately causes Cap to be frozen for 70 years, and when he wakes up in modern day, he realizes that everything around him is different. It's not like the New York that he used to know, where he was gonna ask her out for a dance, but of course that unfortunately didn't happen because of that crash. And then it just ends. It doesn't take like an extra 5 minutes for Steve to register in this new life that he's in, and I think that would have been pretty necessary for an ending for this film instead of just rushing it. Like, how's he feeling about this new life that he's in? Is he still looking for some of the people that he know that might be still alive or already passed away? We don't really get to see like any of that in here. It just has a moment where he realizes that he missed out on a date, and then it just cuts to black. I get it's supposed to sub the Avengers, but it should have had like an extra 5 minutes to show him registering his new life instead of just rushing it and making this ending feel like it was just shoehorned in. Nevertheless, this is still an enjoyable film that I do like watching from time to time, and it's not my favorite Captain America film. I still think that goes to Winter Soldier, because with Winter Soldier, it didn't feel like a setup movie. That one felt like it was being its own thing. It didn't feel like it was rushing things just to set up the next Avengers film. I'm gonna give Captain America the First Avenger a B+. So guys, those are my thoughts on the first Avenger. What did you guys think of it? Do you think it's a great Captain America film, or do you think that this one is not very good and it hasn't aged well? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like this video, then please leave a like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing, because it helps my channel grow. Hit the notification bell so you know what other videos I'm posting. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.